All right, so I want to talk about faith here. All right. And basically, why does God require faith? All right. Because I asked him this a long time ago. I was like, why do you require faith? Why do you want us to believe? Why don't we just ask and we give it to you? I understand why you want us to ask so we can acknowledge that you gave it to us. But why do you require this? So basically, this is what I believe. This is why I believe it is. So the kind of belief God asks you, wants you to have, we know faith is believing, but what kind of belief? Like the Lord really wants us to trust, not just to mentally agree that the Bible is true, but trust. Because when you trust is a matter of the heart, okay? And it's not just mental agreement, but it's a matter of the heart, right? Like Proverbs 3:5, it talks about trust with the Lord, 3:5 and 6, trust with the Lord with all thy heart, lead with thy own understanding on all thy ways, acknowledge him, and he shall direct a path. Okay? Trust is the matter of the heart. Then you have the matter of, what's that? When it talks about the Romans roads, where it talks about confess with your mouth and believe with your what? With your heart. All right? What happens when someone breaks your trust? It hurts your heart. It's not like, oh, I get it. I'm wrong, and then that's it. That's not what happens when someone breaks your trust. Trust is a matter of the heart, and when someone violates your trust, you feel violated because it's a matter of the heart. All right? You rest in this fact. You rest in this, and you operate. You just rest in the fact that it's true, but you operate as though it's true. What's will happen when you really trust something is true. You operate as though it's true. Just like I trust that the sun is going to come up tomorrow. I trust that the ground is going to be there when I walk. I trust that the air is going to be fresh when I breathe. So I take it for granted. And I operate as though it's true. Now, if I didn't trust that, I would operate with unsurety and be unwavering, and the Bible talks about a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways and don't expect anything from him. I believe it's James 1:8. But regardless, this is what it is. This is what it is. So why does it require it though? Why does he ask for this? This still doesn't tell me it is. But notice what I'm saying before, because this builds up to something. So you rest and rely on those as true. You act and you speak as though it's true. All right. All these things are important. So in essence, what is faith? In essence, what faith is? I mean, faith is respecting and honoring God's word. That's what faith is. And when you respect his word, right? You respect the integrity of his word, and you honor it. Therefore, then and you ask according to it. Then he'll honor your prayer. All right. How can I put this? So, respect means, what is respect? Respect means to take something seriously. When you respect something, you take something seriously. So if you respect that, if someone told you they was going to try to shoot you, right, and you believed them, you would act accordingly. You would really act accordingly. You would start moving different, right? That's what you would do. But if you didn't believe him, you'd be like, whatever. You act the same as you always did. If someone told you that you had $1 million in your bank account, take it if you're a regular dude, and then you really believe them, you will act accordingly. How that is, that depends on the person, but they'll act accordingly. If they didn't really believe it, then they would just, if they didn't believe it, they wouldn't. But that means if they didn't believe it, they didn't take that word seriously. But if they did believe it, they took that word seriously, right? It doesn't mean they liked the word. It means they took the word seriously. All right? You believe they honored their word. All right. And another thing, honor is not to hold to something high esteem, but to hold something with high importance and in its proper place. All right. When you honor something, you hold something in its proper place or in proper importance. So when you hold God's word in the proper importance and its proper place, and you take his word seriously, that's the kind of faith that pleases God. That's the kind of faith that pleases God, because you'll rest in it, believe, and operate in it as though it's true. All right. take for example Jesus. When Jesus rebuked the disciples, it's just like, why can't you? I mean, he always, he always rebuked them because they was always like when they was panicking when they was on the boat, because they weren't operating and trusting him. When they couldn't cast out the demon, they couldn't do what they had to do because they didn't put for some odd reason they didn't trust them. They didn't have the proper trust. Or when you have the situation, or when you see the James or Romans 11, when you have the halls of faith, everything was about what someone did. Like, if you even look at the David situation, David was talking like he was going to kill the giant, and then he ended up acting he acted according to the faith, and then he ended up slaying the giant. All right. When Rahab, which is mentioned in when Rahab and Abraham, when they believed the word, they acted accordingly. That's mentioned in James, and I believe it's also mentioned in Romans 11. Faith honors God's word. That's what pleases him. Without faith, it's impossible to please him. If you really have faith, you will trust, and then you will act accordingly. It's not necessarily about the act, but it's just when you're doing something in faith, you're honoring him, and that's what he counts as righteousness. All right. When Abraham believed, that's why he counted as righteousness. Look. What is righteousness? Right standing with God. So when Abraham put God's word in the proper place, then he counted Abraham right with him, because Abraham had the right place with him. Therefore, he put Abraham having right standing with him. So faith is honoring God's word. Faith works because it honors God's word. That's what I meant to say. That's what I meant to say. You don't just have faith in anything. You just have faith in God's word, and you believe despite what you. And where's this proper place? You're believing in spite what you see. So you're believing it's true despite what you see. So you have what you see in its proper place, and what God's word is proper place, because God's word is true despite what you see, and that's what pleases God. You know how you remember? Okay, the story. Look at the story of Israel, right? So look when God got mad. So it was after he judged Egypt, after the Red Sea, after he had after he provided for them for 2 years. After all that, they still didn't believe. He still didn't take it seriously. They still was calling him a liar. Because, the opposite is you don't take God's word seriously. You believe it's like calling him a liar, which is insulting to God. That's the flip side to it. And so then when he didn't believe God's word, it was just like, oh, you can't do this and we can't do this. And then he was just like, okay, you can't enter the promised land. If you don't believe I can get you the promised land, okay, then I'm not gonna get you the promised land. And then when he said that I'm not gonna deliver you the promised land, then they still didn't believe what he said, because then they act like, oh, okay, we're going to go in the promised land and fight. And then they got it handed to them because they still didn't believe what God said. If they really believe what God said, they would have just stayed there and just acted like, okay, you know what? It's okay. But they knew they disrespected him. Bible says faith is the substance of things hoped for, evidence of things not seen. So hope is involved. And the Bible talks about you have to be, it talks about this in Romans 11. And you have to believe he is a rewarder of him that diligently seek him. I believe a lot of times we don't know how to have faith. I don't. There's a few stories where I heard where people, when they was believing God for their healing, and then they start acting as though they were healed, and that's when they got healed. I just remember, that's when they got healed, when they start acting as though they was healed. Not when they just sat there and just say, I believe, but when they acted on that faith, that's when they believed. There was one lady who I was just listening to. She wasn't even a faith preacher or nothing. She was just she was believing God to heal her for something. I think it was, I'll forget if it was Crohn's or H. pylori. All right, and then she was just like, well, I believe he healed me, so therefore I'm going to just eat what I want to eat. And then God moved. Now I understand people could go all kind of wrong ways with how they speak, how they move, and how they rest, in how they believe. I understand that, but my point is, faith honors God, and that's why it pleases Him. That's why it pleases Him, because the spirit of faith is what honors God, is respecting Him. You take Him seriously for what He is, because God cannot lie. That's the one thing He can't do in any universe. He cannot lie. If He says something, it's meant to come to pass. So we have to take His word seriously if we want to get our results. And I think a lot of times we settle for a lot of stuff we're not supposed to, because we don't really believe the word, or someone taught us some messed up God's sovereignty in a messed up way, because some parts of it is true, and some parts of it people went a little bit too far with it, and it allows them to settle for a lot less than what they're supposed to. Like some things you're supposed to expect. Like when you believe in you for salvation, you're supposed to believe you're saved. Once you believe that, before you even do anything, you just say, okay, I believe, Lord, I believe that you died, rose from the dead, and died for my sins. I make you my Lord. I'm saved. All right. But when you make Him your Lord and you believe He's your Lord, then you speak and act accordingly. Because if you reward somebody when they here's the thing, if you keep blessing somebody, even though they don't respect you, keep giving them stuff before they respect you, you're enabling them disrespecting you, and they're just not going to they're just going to do anything. They're not going to respect anything you do. They're not going to respect anything you say, and they're just going to act any kind of way. So you have to teach them to believe. You have to teach them to believe. Because if somebody didn't believe in it, if you did a bunch of stuff for a person, they still didn't believe in you, then would you keep doing stuff for that person? Would you? Maybe at first, but would you still continue to do stuff? You'd be a lot slower to do stuff later on if they just treated you like you was a liar, like you couldn't fulfill your word even though you proved otherwise. Same with Him. So yeah, this is what I believe when it comes to faith. Yeah, this is what I believe the spirit of faith is. Next week later on this week I'm gonna end up finishing my little thing. I'm gonna go a little further in my slavery talk. And then after that, next week next Sunday I'm gonna probably talk about mercy, and then I'm gonna talk about grace after that. But anyways, that's really all I have to say about that. Thanks for your time. Thanks for watching.